welcome everybody. Today we are introducing to you Lori Gillespie, who has worked with us for a couple of years now, and she'll be presenting the power of story to you today. And all right, Lori, whenever you're ready, feel free to begin.
Yeah, so do you need me to share my screen, my PowerPoint, or were you able to get it in there?
It should be in there. Go ahead and check.
Okay. So this is all new for me, you guys, so I'm going to try and make sure this works. Okay. There it is. If you can see it, everybody give me a thumbs up, all right, or something. Tay, can you see it? Awesome. Wonderful. So good afternoon. I want to thank you all so much for being here today as we talk about one of my favorite subjects, storytelling. And I want to thank Carrie and Digital Respons-Ability for asking me to be a part of this digital education series. And I sincerely hope that you will all have a nugget or two to take home with you today. So you'll want to have some place to take some notes. So if you need to grab a pad of paper and a pen, or if you're just going to take it on your iPad or right on your screen, that's great. But you're going to want some place to take some notes. So go ahead and do that while we kick it off. And I believe that Tay has my first polling question, because I want to get to know you a little bit and what you do. So Tay, if you could pull that up.
Okay, polling is not working from my side. So let's go ahead, answer in the chat.
Okay.
Who are you? Do you teach preschool? Do you teach littles, K through 4? Do you teach middles, 5 through 8? Or bigs, 9 through 12? Or are you not a teacher and just really wanted to come? Head Start, middle school, a librarian.
A consultant, great. Good, so we have like a good representation. So I'm really excited to have you here today. And I bet you're wondering who I am, right? Who is this lady who's talking to me? So like Tay said, I'm Lori Gillespie and I'm a storyteller. And I'm sure most of you just thought, oh, what's a storyteller? So I spent many years, more than I care to count, in finance as a compliance director. And then I had a personal tragedy and I realized that life is way too short and I needed to be happy. And after some soul searching, I discovered that the things that made me happiest were stories. So all kinds of stories, from films and books and art and music. So I left the corporate world and I became a storyteller. And I've been writing and teaching, and can't believe I'm saying this out loud. I'm putting it into the universe, so it's actually going to happen. I've started making a movie with some old friends of mine. And over this journey, I've discovered that stories are a lifeline, not only to our past, but to our future. And stories are core to who we are, and it makes us human. And today I want to talk to you about the power of stories. Figure out how to make this go forward. Here we go. So let's start today with a quote. I'm sure since most of you are educators, you've seen this quote before. A teacher affects eternity. He can never tell where his influence stops. You've probably seen this on memes and posters and, I don't know, throw pillows, right? You've probably if you've been a teacher long enough, you may have gotten this as a gift from somebody. And I'm just curious, and think to yourself, and if you want to type in the chat, that's great too. What kind of feelings does this quote stir up for you? Does it make you feel good? Does it make you feel proud to be an educator? Does it make you feel hopeful? Does it scare you just a little bit? So let's look at the origin of this quote. So here's the origin story. Origin stories have been really popular lately, right? The Batman origins, the Joker origin story. And I mean, you can think of all kinds of origin stories that have happened. And what happens is you meet a character in a book or a movie and you go to yourself, who's this guy? I want to know what his story is, right? And as a lover of history, I have a degree in history. One of the questions I almost always ask myself is, where did this quote come from? Or where did this person come from? I want to know what life they lived. I want to know how whatever that quote is relevant today. I always want to know more. So when I was planning this talk, I immediately knew I wanted to start with this quote. I mean, you've all seen it, right? And like most quotes, they're taken out of context, and often they don't mean what we think it means, and they're often manipulated by media and other outside sources to express a certain agenda. And like most phrases, they are said really, really often. And so when I went down this rabbit hole, which is Google, to try to figure out what the origin story of this quote was, and I found it. And guess what? It's not exactly what you think it is. So who's Henry Adams? Henry Adams is part of the lineage of President John Adams, and he was educated at Harvard, and he was teaching at Harvard, and he wrote a book called The Education of Henry Adams, which is where this quote comes from. So he was an educator of history, and he was concerned about how they were teaching history and how their students were learning history and how they were leaving the school. And so let me read the paragraph from the book where the quote lives. It says, this is the paragraph that it's in. A parent gives life, but as a parent gives no more. A murderer takes but life, and his deed stops there. A teacher affects eternity. He can never know where his influence stops. A teacher is expected to teach truth and may perhaps flatter himself that he does so. If he stops with the alphabet or the multiplication table, as a mother teaches truth by making her child eat with a spoon, but morals are quite another truth, and philosophy is more complex still. A teacher must either treat history as a catalog, a record, a romance, or as an evolution. And whether he affirms or denies evolution, he falls into the burning faggots of the pit and makes of his scholars either priests or atheists, plutocrats or socialists, judges or anarchists, almost in spite of himself. That's a lot. That's a lot of responsibility. But that little jaunt into the origin story was fun, wasn't it? It made you think, it gave you some kind of an emotion, right? And that's why we love stories. Stories, whoops, too far, I'm so sorry. Stories bring us joy, they offer escape, and they make our brains work. They make us think. And that's a lot. So, I'm going to do another quick little poll. I'm going to have you type the answers in the chat if you can. Tay, could you pop on real quick and read the question? I don't have the question in front of me. I said those to you. So it's pretty much, how much time do we spend with stories every day? What are some of the
how much
options?
time do we spend? 30 minutes, 4 hours, 12 hours, or more than 12 hours? Go ahead and put your answer in the chat box.
So 30 minutes, 4 hours,
20 minutes,
12 hours, more than 12 hours. A couple more.
Every waking moment.
Yeah.
Like that.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So it's actually a lot. So let's look at some statistics I have up here, or some ideas, I guess. So in 2015, just talking about teens here, they spent nearly 9 hours consuming media. And think what media is. It's just stories, right? It's somebody talking to them, telling them something. 9 hours a day. And a new report that came out in 2019 shows that tweens and teens have doubled their time watching videos in 4 years. I have teenagers. They spend so much time watching YouTube videos. Can anybody relate to that, right? And in the last 4 years, they've doubled their time watching those. But that's not all. Our inner monologue runs by itself all day long. So I was reading that we have daydreams all day long, right? And each of our daydreams lasts an average of 14 seconds. And we have about 2,000 of those every day. So right there, that's about 1/3 of your day consumed in in daydreams, plus all of the other media. So it's probably actually all day, every day. So somebody up there said that, so that's great. So we spend most of our days immersed in stories. So if that's true, then how can we use that to our advantage? Well, there's actually some science behind storytelling. And it kind of gets into why stories are so important to us. So here's a quote from, he's a psychologist actually. It says, "Story is what the brain does. It is a story processor, not a logic processor." I'm going to read that again. Story is what the brain does. It is a story processor, not a logic processor. Do you buy into that? Let's look at an example real quick. Anybody a Star Trek fan? I've watched enough Star Trek in my life. Think about, there's Dr. Spock and there's Data. What did they have a difficult time with? Emotion, right? They could handle anything that was logical, but anything that required some thought and some emotion was really, really hard for them. So let's take a look at that. So what do we love as people? We love a mystery. We want more information. We're always looking for the unanswered questions. So we like to discover the answers. We like to solve puzzles. If we have an unanswered question, we want more, right? Especially if it's something we're interested in or something that's presented to us in an interesting way, we're wanting to know more, and it creates these feelings, and our feelings are what gets our brains working. So stories are meant to create emotion and connection to someone or something, okay? Let's look at that. So there's this thought process that storytelling it's communal, right? And some psychologists will argue that language was developed in order to tell stories. And stories are what kept the tribes functioning. So think about some of the earliest forms of storytelling that you know about. There were pictures on cliffs or a cave. There was dance. There was music. There was this rich, rich history of oral storytelling, right? We like to hear stories. We like to tell stories. And we like to share the emotions that go along with those stories. So all of these forms are still around us today, right? Their stories are with us all day and we love it. So how do we get good at storytelling? You know how you get good at storytelling? Like everything else. You practice and you study it. Now, like I said before, I'm a mom of 2 teenagers. And whenever they tell me that something is difficult or it's too hard, I tell them a story about how they learned to do something, right? Do you remember how you learned how to ride a bike? Do you remember how you learned how to do calculus, right? It's all the same method. Practice, failure, practice, failure, practice, practice, finally success. So storytelling is the same thing. We practice all day long. So you're bound to get better at it, right? We're doing it all day long. And if you make a conscious effort to practice it, you get better at it. But knowing some things about how a story works is important. So when I first started writing, I made a point to read a lot. I still read a lot. Not only novels and screenplays and plays and news articles, but books on how a story is formed, how to put a story together. And one of my favorite references is a book called Save the Cat. There are a couple different ones. There's Save the Cat Writes a Novel. There's Save the Cat Writes a Screenplay. You probably find a couple of others. But what I love about the Save the Cat books is that it introduces 10 story genres in a way that's fun and modern. It gives us the elements that a story genre needs. And then I'll mention some examples that you might be familiar with. So let's take a look at them quickly. And this is where you might want to take some notes, okay? Let's look at the first one. It's the why done it, okay? So what are the elements that you need? You need a detective, you need a secret, and you need a dark turn. Okay. Some examples of this, some books you may have read are The Da Vinci Code, The Adventures of Sherlock Holmes, or The Girl on a Train. Okay. These are all examples of the why done it. What is it about the why done it genre that we love? Well, it's the secret, right? You want to find out what that secret is. Who may have done the dirty deed, or that's pretty much it. Who may have done the dirty deed, right? There's something, and it's pretty dark too. These are dark, and sometimes you really are craving something that's a little bit darker. So there's the why done it. The second one is the rite of passage. And the three elements that you need in your rite of passage is a life problem, a wrong way to attack that problem, and then an acceptance of the hard truth. So some examples of this are Anne of the Green Gables, one of my favorites, Room, which is a little bit more modern book, and The Kite Runner. And if you've read any of these books, you know that each one of these people has a problem. And you know that they've all done something that didn't work, and they've had to come to some very hard truth about the matter. And they tend to be sad. They tend to be, rip out your heart a little bit. And quite frankly, we love those stories too, don't we? Okay, the next group. Institutionalized. Ooh, institutionalized. What do we need for that? First of all, we need a group of people. It's not just one person. There's a choice that needs to happen. And then there's a sacrifice that they have that leads them to either joining something, destroying something, or escaping something. Some examples of this are Fahrenheit 451, which is a book I actually read just last year and found incredibly, modern, or not modern, but important today. The Giver and My Sister's Keeper. If you've read any of those, you'll know that there's a group of people, and it doesn't have to be a large group. It can just be a couple. There's a choice, and a lot of these are, almost dystopian, and they either need to destroy it, get out of there, or they end up becoming part of the group. The next choice is superhero. Oh my, we have a lot of superhero stories nowadays, don't we? So what do we need? We need a power, we need a nemesis, and we need a curse. Some examples are Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, Mockingjay, or Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children. We love superhero stories. Seriously, I think there are more superhero stories now than ever before. And, we like to root for that little bit of an underdog, right? We love the magic that's surrounding it too. The next one is a dude with a problem. So we need an innocent hero, a sudden event, and a life or death battle. A couple books here, three of actually some of my favorite books. The Martian, Hunger Games, and The Firm. All of them have somebody who shouldn't have been put into the situation they were put in, and they have to fight to get out. They're kind of feel-good movies, aren't they? You worry about their peril, but they always feel good. The next one is The Fool Triumphant. So what do we need? We need a fool, an establishment, and a transmutation or change of some sort, right? Why, dude? It's from the book. I don't know. These are the book Save the Cat. These are the way that they were titled. So it could be a chick with a problem too. It's okay. Or it could be a person with a problem, whatever you want, but a dude with a problem is what she called it. So Fool Triumphant. Some examples are Bridget Jones's Diary, Jane Eyre, which is one of my favorite books of all time. I read Jane Eyre about once a year. And Diary of a Wimpy Kid. My kids read those books. And you know what? So here's this person who's not like everybody else. And here's this establishment that kind of looks down on them. And somehow they change. And they become not so geeky, not so strange, not so weird. There's Buddy Love. What you need here is an incomplete hero, a counterpart, and a complication. And when I was looking for some examples of books I might have read that falls into this category, this is the one I got to tell you that just doesn't apply to me. But you might like these. The Notebook, Don Quixote, and Twilight are books that I was at least aware of. I don't know a lot about them, but I can imagine that, at some point, there's a character who's, again, flawed. I know a little bit about the Notebook, right? There's someone else that might take their place, and then there's some other sort of a complication, like in the Notebook, there's Alzheimer's, right? So that's why we love those. Just a couple more. Out of the Bottle is another genre. So here we have a hero deserving of magic. There's some sort of a spell, and there's a lesson. So some examples might be the Christmas Carol, Mary Poppins, or Freaky Friday. So again, in all of these, some magic happens. There's a hero who deserves some magic. There's some sort of problem that they have that deserves some magic to make it better, right? So then there's a spell to change it. And then they learn something at the end, something very important. And they're changed for it. The Golden Fleece, right? So we need a road. They go on a journey in the Golden Fleece. There's a buddy, so there's somebody that goes with them. And there's a prize at the end. Some examples of this are The Wonderful Wizard of Oz, The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn, or Game of Thrones. So, Wonderful Wizard of Oz, everybody's probably familiar with that, right? I mean, there's a literal road, right? There's the yellow brick road. She's got a buddy. She's got a couple buddies, but probably her closest buddy is the Scarecrow. And there's a prize at the end, right? She figures out where she belongs. And the final one is a monster in the house. So what do you need? Well, you need a monster. You need a house. And you need a sin. Some examples of this might be Frankenstein or Jurassic Park or The Shining, right? So let's take Jurassic Park. Again, a favorite book of mine. You know, the monster is actually the scientist, right? The house is the dinosaur park, and the sin is that he created something he shouldn't have created. So, what do you think? Whew, that's a lot, right? Lots of different story types. So you might be thinking, how do I add storytelling to my teaching? Well, storytelling has a place in every lesson, and the key is to not just ask a question, but to ask probing questions, okay? So ones that make the listener really think. So I work with a bunch of personal history clients, people who are writing their memoirs, and many of them tell me that sometimes they don't think there's enough interesting stuff in their lives. But I always tell them that they're wrong, right? And so we have a discussion, and I start off with questions that make them think. And when they get stuck, I ask more probing questions, and it really gets them to realize that they are interesting. And I make sure to ask those questions with sincere interest, okay? So emotion, problem solving, and sincere interest, that's the recipe for a good story and the recipe for good learning. So let's practice, okay? We're going to take a little bit of time. I need you to grab your pencil and your pen and or pull out your computer or something to write on, because I'm going to have you actually write for a couple minutes, okay? So let's look at this picture. What does this picture tell? Put out on paper some ideas, some words, some feelings about this photo. I'll give you a minute or so to do that. I'm going to get a drink while you do. And if you're feeling brave, you can type some of those into the chat function. What story does this picture tell you? Anyone feeling brave? Want to share? Take a look at what you wrote. Where did your brain take you? This is the interactive part of our presentation. Pandemic, wearing a mask, solitude, yeah. Blown out of a car, where's my extra mask? Pandemic brought the official mask wearing outfit. I love it. Anybody else? Pandemic. Degraded. What discarded mask out of frustration? Oh, I like that one. COVID 2020 nurses, yeah. So everybody's brain went to kind of the same thing, right? Pandemic, which was kind of the purpose of this photo, but everybody had a different story around it. I love that. Student tripped and the mask fell off. Now they're crying, nobody can get them help. Wow. I was hurrying, my mask flew out of my bag. Oh no. Yeah, we're living such a new world right now, right? You're like phone, keys, mask, right? It used to just be phone, keys. Now it's phone, keys, mask. Cool. Okay. Let's go to the next photo. Where are we? Here we are. Okay. This was a sentence I wrote. I'll read it to you, and I want you to do the same thing as the last sentence, okay? Angelica walked the dog through the park on that rainy Saturday afternoon after the unimaginable happened. What are your ideas around this one? What kind of story can you build around this sentence? Some great ideas. Ooh, someone teleported away. Somebody likes science fiction. Ooh. We got some great things. A fanciful someone teleported away. The boy she liked kissed her. A cat comes out of somewhere. She wants to be promoted at work, but maybe it's not what she really wants. Her dog ran away. There was a sudden death. She slips and finds a new love of her life, Hallmark style. Yeah. Angelica finally got the job that she's always wanted and will need to move to an area where there are no parks nearby. So she's walking the dog to decide what to do with her dog. Oh, wow. Yeah, so it creates lots of ideas, right? You want to know more. Does everybody want to know more of this story? You know what this story is based on? Hamilton, the unimaginable. So that's where I came up with that story. It's one of my favorites. But, stories can take all forms, right? Let's look at some of the forms that stories can be. We talked about a few of them earlier, but they can be written, they can be oral, they can be film or video, games, video or board games. Have you ever played any board games that tell a story? Dungeons and Dragons, there are a bunch of others too. Photos, art, right? All of them can be used to enhance learning and help make us better educators. And using stories, how can you use them in class? Well, think about what your kids are spending their time with and bring those methods into the lessons, right? So do you think you could write a whole lesson using memes? Probably. Think you could write a whole lesson using music? Probably. And it doesn't just need to be, the history or English, right? You could use those same kind of lessons for math or science. You just need to get creative and know the elements of a story. So let's talk about what every story needs, okay? Every story needs a limp and an eye patch. What does that mean? It means that the characters need to be flawed, right? They need to be real. Nobody's perfect. There needs to be an imperfection. So give everybody a limp and an eye patch. Your characters need to arc, right? The story needs to go somewhere. Change needs to happen. And then 5 acts are best. Don't be afraid of that, right? It doesn't have to be a 5-act play. 5 acts just are, they need to have 5 elements, right? It needs to have a setup. It needs to have a conflict. It needs to have a turning point. It needs to have a revelation. It needs to have a resolution. If you can get all those things in that order, you've put together a good story and something that you can tell and use to teach any lesson. So how do you get started? Well, start with the problem. Have you ever heard the term in medias res? I heard this way back in high school, and I'm probably a lot older than everybody else here on this presentation today, but it means in the middle, right? Start in the middle of something. You want to create a moment of change, right? Boredom equals boring. Everything is constant. So you want unexpected change. Make your kids curious. Ask them questions. Don't tell them everything. Send us on a journey. Anyway, thank you so much for spending some time with me the last little bit. Tay, I'll let you take over the reins, see if there are any questions. If you have any questions for me, I would love it if you could type them in the chat, and then Tay's gonna, and if you need me, if anybody wants me to go back to a slide, I'm happy to do that. Whatever you're curious about, I'd love to hear what you thought as well. So thanks, Tay.
Thank you, Lori. One of the questions was if we could send the PowerPoint presentation out.
Well, we're recording it, right?
We are.
So can't you go back and look at the recording? Because I'd rather not send it out. And I don't have problems with people looking at the recording again to see what I've written, but I'd rather not send my material out.
Yeah, okay. That makes total sense. I wanted to get your permission before I did that.
Yeah.
Okay, so
the previous slide. So I just went back for Lisbeth. She wanted to see the previous slide again. So.
Okay, keep going in the comments. Any questions, we're here to answer them. And in the meantime, we are, okay, our contact info, I'll type it in here. Contact Respons-Ability.net. And they would like the last slide, Lori.
Yep, I just want to make sure that Elizabeth got what she needed off of that. If you did, Elizabeth, can you say yes? Okay, great.
Good.
So this was really fun. I hope that you guys got something out of this, that you learned something that you can find useful. Like I said, storytelling is my passion right now. So I think we can all become better at it. And what's my favorite story to tell? Oh, gosh. That one's hard. What stories do I like to tell? So I like to tell the story of how I accidentally ran a marathon. Tay's smiling. I accidentally ran a marathon. Yeah. So I started running probably about 15 years ago. I was nearing 40 and felt like I needed to do something to, become healthier. I had young children, and when you have young kids, you worry about, am I going to be here for them? Am I going to be able to do what they need me to do? And so a friend of mine suggested that I started running. So I started running, and I ran some races, and I just didn't love 5Ks. They didn't feel long enough. They didn't feel like I was doing much. Those are just, I feel like going out for a run kind of thing. And I don't like 10Ks because 10Ks are for fast people, right? 10K runners, it's longer than a 5K, but it's not a half marathon. So they're going to run the 10Ks. And, I was always like the very last person coming in a 10K race. And I'm like, this 10Ks are not for me. So my friend said, why don't you try the half marathon? Because it's just long enough that the fast runners don't want to do it. And it's doable. So started doing some half marathons, and I was loving that. That distance was what I was built for, I guess, because it still took me 3 hours to run a half marathon. But, I felt like, oh, I could totally do that. And then we're going to visit my in-laws, and there was a half marathon in Texas. I thought, oh, I'll go do this half marathon. It'll be fun. So I go to sign up for it, and I hit enter in all the information, enter in my credit card, hit send, and something flashes on my screen that says, congratulations, you've just signed up for the marathon. And I just about died. I felt like I was going to puke. I felt like I was going to faint, and I needed to solve this problem. Well, I thought, I can do this. I can figure out how to do this. There's plenty of time. So I actually ran a marathon. Not accidentally, I guess. I accidentally signed up for a marathon. I didn't accidentally run it. But that's a fun story to tell for me. It kind of helped me realize that if I put my mind to something, I can do just about anything. So
I liked Elizabeth's question, your favorite topic for love, loss, etc.
My favorite topic for love, loss, etc. I'm not sure what you're asking. My favorite topic. Oh, I don't know what you mean. Could you help me out just a little bit more, Elizabeth? Can you tell me what you're getting at there? My favorite story to share about love loss. Love loss. Put me on the spot there. I'm trying to run through all kinds of books that I've read, movies that I've seen. It's probably the story I'm writing right now that I'm not really able to share with you. So you're just going to have to wait about a year and then look for my book, okay? Okay.
All
Anything
right.
else, my friends? Thank you so much. I had such a wonderful time. Like I said, I hope that you found something today.
We're so happy that all of you came. It was so fun chatting with you in the comment section. And thank you so much, Lori, for putting this together and presenting today. Our next webinar is next month. I'm putting the link to register in the comments box. You will also receive that link in your email later today with the link to rewatch this as you would like to. So if you have that slide up, if you could go to our next one.
Yeah, I'll move forward. Yeah.
Thanks. There's our credits. Oh, sorry, Lisbeth. Go longer next time.
Oh, I'm sorry. I guess I talked too fast. I was expecting 45 minutes, and I think that's right about where we're at. So.
Yeah. Okay. So our next presentation is Wednesday, February 10th at noon. Again, sorry, Ruth. We'll try to. We'll go longer more. We're just interested in everything you have to say, Lori. We'll be discussing.
I thought it was going to go really long, actually. I'm like, oh, I can't talk I put too much more in here, but I find that I talk too fast sometimes, and I apologize for that. I hope everybody could understand what I was saying.
Okay, so next month we'll be discussing online safety in the classroom. So come and discuss with us Q&A. How can we keep kids safe when we are using tech for school and when we're in the classroom, someday when we all get back in. We will be having a special guest, Paul Langhorst, who is one of the board of directors for SchoolTube. And anyway, this is a topic of choice that Carrie loves to present on, and we're really excited and hope that you guys will be there too, so we can see familiar faces and have these fun conversations again. Okay, you are welcome, and we are so grateful to have you here. We will go ahead and end this presentation and hope to see you soon.